gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Edge of the hill, Jackson Cage, down in the Jackson Cage. Even try with all your might, but you're reminded every night that you've been judged and hanged and laid down in the Jackson Cage.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a series of episodes of Set Lusting Bruce that we are calling Jackson Cage Matches. In pure shout out to our friends at Bruce Springsteen Sings the Alphabet, when they were discussing Jackson Cage, they said, how did Jesse Jackson not name his podcast Jackson Cage? And when Rob and JB thought about that, I said, well, maybe I could do this. And I decided that it might be fun to actually do a cage match, that you take two beloved Bruce Springsteen songs and then have a guest join me and we debate which are better. And kind of, picking between your favorite children, or how, hard to choose. And I am so honored that Bella is joining me tonight, and we're going to have a special Seeger session cage match. How you doing, Bella?
I'm doing great, Jesse. I'm glad to be back on the podcast. Glad you're doing well.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Before we hit record, we kind of caught up on my health issues, and I'm doing very well. I am feeling the love and the good thoughts and the prayers of everyone, so thank you so much. And how are you doing in our new climate of political joy?
I'm doing okay. I was telling Jesse before we started that I have a new job that's more policy and press focused, so we have a lot of work to do all the time because new stuff keeps happening in the administration. But yeah, pretty as well as can be. I guess my basic fundamental rights haven't been threatened yet, so I'm trying to keep the faith.
Yeah, I'm trying to be positive too. And before we get to discussion of song, do you want to remind us again about the sign-up program, the website you were part of helping to set up and build your friend, which is a way to be engaged?
Yes. So I am the co-founder and one of the main leaders of Call Them In, which is a email-based reminder system that gives you scripts and information about your senators to make it as easy as possible to call your senators. So right now, as of April 24th, we're doing a lot of emails on the budget because there's a lot of programs in the federal budget that the president suggested that are going to be really harmful for Americans in every state. So we're doing this really cool, state-by-state email. So, Jesse, if you get an email about the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, you'll see that 300,000 families in Texas would be without heat if this program got cut. But in New York, I'd see that 1 million families would be without heat. So we're doing these really cool state-by-state things. We're working on government shutdown stuff because as of April 28th, there's a possibility that the government might shut down. But we are here for you. We're here to give you all the information. So if you want to sign up for our emails, you can go to callthemin.com, CALLTHEMIN.com.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really appreciate is that it is specifically for, my state. It gives you the phone numbers, it gives you a script, but even if you perhaps may have a different opinion, maybe you were supportive of some of the nominees that
Sure.
President Trump, you still have the ability. It's a good reminder to say there is a debate going on, let your voice be heard. And so I just think it's a wonderful program. And my wife, who was very upset with the election, after she signed up for this, she came back and she said, "You just tell Bella that's wonderful because even I feel comfortable because, instead of just picking up the phone and calling saying, 'Hey, I'm unhappy,' she says there's a script there that tells so I sound intelligent and I know what to say and I feel like my voice is being heard."
Oh, I'm so glad she feels that way. That's exactly what we're looking for. Not just comfort on her end, but for me as a political staffer, I can tell when scripts are badly written. So like we write our scripts so that you get your name, your state, and your issue out right away so that if the staffer wants to tune out, they can.
Yeah. And I think it's just so important. And I think everyone has said, emails and physical letters, but really phone calls are what can make people change their minds. And they can go, oh my goodness, I will not name names, but there's only two, and I will blame both of my Texas senators, at one point turned it all on voicemail, and the voicemail was full. So I
will say that is not a partisan critique because my senator, the beloved Chuck Schumer, who I love so deeply and so much, has also turned it on voicemail.
Yeah, I just went to Twitter and, said, Senator Cruz, Senator Corwin, your voicemail's full. Why aren't you wanting to hear me? And I think to give them the honest opinion, you give them the benefit of the doubt. It may just be because so many people are calling and they just have not had a chance to clear it out yet. This wasn't trying to, stay away from people. So anyway, I think this is a great service and I'm glad we could talk about it, which leads us to a perfect thing.
Yes.
We're going to talk a little Pete Seeger and Bruce Springsteen's The Seeger Sessions, aren't we?
Yes, we are. My favorite, I wouldn't say my favorite album, but my favorite combination of artists.
Yeah, when you were on here before, you talked about that you had a special love or obsession with Pete Seeger and a lot of his music. Can you remind us why that happened or what led to this?
No. Obsession is the correct word.
Okay.
It happened because I forget exactly how it started, but I got really into protest music in general when I was in college, and so when I was thinking about what to do my thesis on, I thought about Pete Seeger and I thought about his music in the 1960s because at that point I had done a little bit of research on it, and so at my school the thesis was a year-long process, so I just kind of spent a whole year doing a lot of research on Pete Seeger, writing a lot about Pete Seeger, thinking a lot about Pete Seeger, and he's such a wonderful person in almost every way. Any issue, you can find him like on the right side of it. And he believed like fundamentally in the power of music and song to change hearts and minds. So it touched me really deeply and I really liked his life philosophy. And so even if there's songs of his that I don't enjoy, because I see the life philosophy behind it, I appreciate like almost everything he's ever written. So.
And I sent this to you on Twitter. I'm a big Harry Chapin fan. And, his Old Folky was specifically for Pete. And that is one of my favorite Harry Chapin songs. It's so upbeat and happy and just talking about fighting the good fight. So as a Seeger fan, any thoughts on Harry's tribute to Pete?
I thought it was lovely. I mean, I thought it was a wonderful little encapsulation of Pete Seeger's life. And this happened to me a lot when I was doing this research. You see these songs that these people write about Pete Seeger, and you're like, well, that just sums up everything better than I did in this huge paper. Because he's a singer. His life is best summed up in song.
Yeah.
Have you heard actually Harry Chapin's, I think his daughters or his granddaughters, the Chapin sisters? They're very good.
I will have to check them out. I have not. So.
They're wonderful, and they have a solo, or they have an acoustic cover of Britney Spears' "Toxic" that is incredible.
All right, I will have to check that out. So we debated a lot on what Seeger Session songs we wanted to kind of put in the cage match. And so to kind of once again remind you, the theory is we're going to pick two beloved songs. We're going to pick Thunder Road and Born to Run. And we're going to put them in a match, and we're going to say only one can win. And this is purely our opinion. We're going to debate back and forth. Hopefully we'll come to an agreement. Maybe we won't. But we think the discussion will be about the fun of it. And so you picked two Seeger songs. And they are...
Well, I picked We Shall Overcome because that's one of my favorites.
Well, we shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Darling, here in my heart, yeah, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Darling, here in my heart, yeah, I do believe we'll walk hand in hand someday. Well, we shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Darling, here in my heart, yeah, I do believe we shall live in peace someday. Well, we are not afraid. We are not afraid. We shall overcome someday. Darling, here in my heart, yeah.
And when I first checked it, I was like, oh, there's not a song alive that can touch We Shall Overcome. And then, Jesse, you suggested, what about This Land Is Your Land, which isn't on the Seeger Sessions, but I think it's on the live album.
Yes.
But you said, what about This Land Is Your Land? And I was like, oh, that's the only song that makes this a competition.
Well, once I rode that ribbon highway, I saw above me the endless sky. I saw below me a golden valley. Now this land was made for you and me. I roamed and I rambled and I followed my footsteps through the sparkling sands of the diamond desert. Well, the sun came shining as I went strolling through the wheat fields waving, and her dust clouds rolling, and her bells were ringing as the fog was lifting, and I seen this land was made for you and me.
Yeah, and and that was the idea. If we did, if we did Night with the Jersey Devil against Thunderland, or Thunder Road, we may not. It'd be a very short podcast. So,
Exactly. If it was We Shall Overcome versus Froggy Wennecorton, it's not that hard.
Yeah, exactly. So, you have a little information on both songs, correct? So,
I do.
Let's start with This Land Is Your Land, because I do know you have a slight bias for We Shall Overcome. So we're going to start with This Land Is Your Land, then we'll go to that one. So.
Okay. So This Land Is Your Land is by Woody Guthrie, and it was written in 1940, and he wrote it as a response to God Bless America by Irving Berlin. So he heard God Bless America, and he thought, that's not my America. That's not really the America that I see every day. So the original chorus of the song was God Blessed America for Me. But it got changed throughout the years. But that was why he wrote it originally. And yeah. And This Land Is Your Land touched on a lot of the beautiful things in America, a lot of the wonderful things in America, but it also talked about homeless people that Guthrie saw. And there's a whole verse where Guthrie decries owning property because he's a bit of a communist. I mean, he's not really, but he kind of is. So over the years, a lot of the left-wing verses, like the homeless shelter verse and like the private property verse, have gotten phased out for one reason or another. So you mostly, when you're singing it as a kid, you only sing the like pretty three verses about, the ribbon of highway, the roaming and the rambling, but you don't get the in the squares of the city, in the shadow of the steeple, by the relief office, I saw my people.
Yeah, and so you really, it is almost this, on the road again, geographical, isn't America beautiful, and song. And it wasn't until I had gotten older, and specifically when Bruce had sang it and I started doing some research on it, you realized how powerful a song this was, and it's not just an updated version of America the Beautiful. It truly is a song talking about a lot of different parts of this country of ours.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the good and the bad, and kind of taking it all and saying, well, this is all of our lands. And even at the end of his life, when Woody Guthrie was dying, he noticed that people were starting to phase out the left-wing verses. And so he asked his son Arlo, he was like, you got to write them down. You got to preserve them. And so when Arlo performs the song, he includes those verses. And a lot of people, Pete Seeger included, when they perform This Land Is Your Land, they include these more left-wing verses.
Yeah, and it is, I think sometimes, pointing out where we are not doing as well as we should is an important part of a musician's job and what we want them to do, at least from my perspective, right?
I think you're absolutely right. I think that's something vital that musicians do. They have to tell what they're seeing and the truth of what they're seeing, even if it's not easy to hear.
Yeah, and, I want to stress, like one of the things just recently happened, right, is, Bruce says, I'm an embarrassed American, not that I'm embarrassed about America. And people are very quick to hear the wrong thing And so, just because we say there may be problems with our country does not mean that we're not proud of it, nor do we not think. It's the old joke. Go ahead. Go ahead, say something.
No, there's a quote, and I was just going to Google it. There's a quote, "My country, right or wrong, when right to be kept right, when wrong to be put right." And so it's just like, instead of saying, well, I'm not an American when this thing happens, or it's not my country, it's like, no, it's still my country, but it's doing wrong, and so I'm going to fight for what I think is right in this country.
And I think a lot of times and I'm going to get the quote wrong, but I know it's, legal people will talk about all the flaws in our legal system and all the problems we have, and then we'll end with, yet it's the best system that's out there currently, but that just because we have flaws doesn't mean we don't try to make ourselves better, and we don't try to do better. Maya Angelou, right? When I knew better, I did better. And
yes, exactly.
And I think that's always a good thing to remember about ourselves. Fascinating. And I think it's interesting that Bruce at that point in his career, started doing this. He started rising, he started getting a political conscious. And, Bella, I don't know if you've heard it yet, but I had a discussion with one of Jeff, and we talked about how similar Merle Haggard and Bruce Springsteen's songs were.
I just listened to that one, and I loved it because I, too, am a Merle Haggard fan.
Yes. And even though you would not think they were politically the same, the idea of singing for the common man and, where is the work that will make my hands, free, my soul, and working man blues, there is a lot of, Bruce has always been, at least as he got to be a mature musician, singer, songwriter, was all about helping people and being a voice of people like his father.
And that's exactly what Guthrie did as well. A lot of Guthrie's songs, especially in the earlier days, were about the Dust Bowl and people having to leave from the Dust Bowl because that's what Woody Guthrie had to do. He lived in Oklahoma, and he was like, well, I can't make a living here. So he left. He went to, New York, California, and that's what he wrote his songs about.
Oh, awesome. All right. So our next song, In This Corner, We Shall Overcome. So tell me a little bit about that.
Okay. I'm going to try to keep it short because
and that's okay.
I can talk about We Shall Overcome.
Go for it.
All day
Go with
long.
your passion. Yes.
So unlike This Land Is Your Land, there is no clear writer of We Shall Overcome. It's based on a spiritual that can be traced back to 1901, which was written by Reverend Charles Tindley, and it was a hymn called I'll Overcome Someday. And then in 1945, black workers took those lyrics and set them to the tune of a gospel song called I Will Be All Right. And it was actually, it was Lucille Simmons, who was one of the workers on the strike. She was like, no, this gospel song is way too fast. We can't clap along because we're carrying these big placards, so we have to slow it down. And so she slows it down, and she changes the I to a we. So now it's we will overcome someday. So that's 1945. 1947, these two workers from that strike, from the tobacco workers strike, come to this school called the Highlander Folk School. And the Highlander Folk School is like a big deal in civil rights work. Rosa Parks went there. Martin Luther King went there. And it was kind of like organizing training. And I'm reading a book right now about Rosa Parks, and they say that for her, when she went to Highlander, it was the first time ever in her life that she had been in an integrated space. So,
wow.
Yeah. So these two workers from the strike teach the song I'll Overcome, or I Will Overcome Someday, to Zilphina Horton, who was the wife of the man who ran the folk school. And she was the one who taught it to Pete Seeger. Pete Seeger slowed down the song a little bit more, and he's the one who changed the word will to shall, because he thought shall opened the mouth a little more and was better for singing. So he publishes the song in 1948. He publishes We Shall Overcome. It like spread like wildfire. He called it a widely known non-hit. And then in 57, this is my last fact, in 57, he's performing the song at the Highlander Folk School anniversary, and he's performing this song, and a young preacher was in the audience, and when the preacher was driving away in his car, he's humming the song, and he goes, "Oh, that song really sticks with you." And that was Martin Luther King.
Wow.
So it's got a long and storied history. It's the anthem of the civil rights movement. People still sing it today, not so much in civil rights context. They sing it more as like a remembrance song. It's not really used in like Black Lives Matter protests today, although I have been at some Black Lives Matter marches where they've used it. But it was primarily had its heyday in the 50s and 60s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty interesting. And, you know, if we were to just think about that, you know, how significant, you know, Dr. King just hearing that and making this, and this has become synonymous with, you know, especially the 60s civil rights movements, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Even President Johnson, in a speech on the Voting Rights Act in I'm going to embarrass myself, 65, in a 1965 speech to Congress, Johnson quotes the song.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
It is. So, so Bruce has covered both of them,
Yes.
as we talked about, on his Box Live, massive live set. It has that. He has played This Land Is Your Land. He talked about, you know, as I said, you know, we talked about, I think, when he started to discover himself and being comfortable being a little more political and speaking for the, you know, the people like his father and the people there from New Jersey. And then on the Seeger sessions, correct, he has We Shall Overcome, correct?
Yes. And so the Seeger Sessions is not specifically a political album. I think it could have been a lot more political, but it's less of Pete Seeger's greatest political hits and more of, you know, Seeger songs that Bruce also liked. But We Shall Overcome is one awesome exception.
Yeah, in fact, not that I want to edit Bruce. I think he knows what he's doing, but I would have left off, you know, a couple, perhaps, For Argument of Court and a couple others that, and maybe put on a little more.
Yes, I would have not, like, I would have left off those songs or replaced them with other children's songs that Seeger did that packed more of a punch.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
when I meet Bruce Springsteen, I'll tell him that.
Yes, we'll go, hey, Bruce, let's talk about it for a moment. You know, what were you thinking? You know,
really, old Dan Tucker, Bruce, really?
You know, and here on a totally basic facts to shout out to Rob and JB, you know, when I was in elementary school, you know, we did Dan Tucker and For Argument of Court, and we did different versions. So they they don't quite sound the same way they did when back in the 60s when I was singing in, you know, Oak Park Elementary School in Lake Charles, Louisiana. So, so they always just sound a little bit, yes. Yeah.
That's interesting.
And I can't go specifically, but, yeah, it's just an interesting thing. So, we certainly can't judge these two based on chart appearances because, as you said, both of these are kind of unexpected, kind of unknown hits, correct?
Well, here's the thing. If we're gonna talk staying power,
yeah,
I guess This Land Is Your Land has a little more staying power in terms of you could probably go to any elementary school in America, sing the first line of This Land Is Your Land, and have all the kids sing it.
Yeah.
However, I will argue and have argued that We Shall Overcome has packed more of a political punch and did more in the time that it was being used.
Yeah, and I think the other thing going against This Land Is Your Land is, much like Born in the USA, there are some it's misunderstood, and it is not it does not have necessarily that strong punch of politicalism that the song meant. So while it has staying power, has its message been diluted by all the elementary schools singing it?
Definitely an argument to make. And I want to plug my personal favorite version of This Land Is Your Land, which is a Bruce Springsteen version, but not the album one. It's the one him and Seeger did for Obama's concert when Obama was first inaugurated.
Right.
Because there they do all of the verses. So they sing all the controversial verses, and you can hear the crowd and the backup singers like not singing along with those because they don't know them.
Right.
So. Yeah,
and I think that's fascinating. I have heard that story that to go on a little bit of a tangent.
Please.
Yeah, they will talk about that, how strong Bruce is, and and when I've heard the story, and now then, God, I'm old. I'm going to blame it on the chemo. Rage Against the Machine guitarist who just toured.
Oh, Tom Morello.
Okay, Tom Morello. Thank you. I'm drawing a blank. So, Tom Morello tells the story. The first time they did Ghost of Tom Joad, there was a debating on which key they were going to do, and Bruce said which key it was, and said, and it will be terrific, and just end the discussion. And Tom said that was the first time he went, wow, okay, he really is the boss. So the story, right, is that Seeger goes, we're going to do all the verses. And Bruce like, really? Yes. And Bruce like, okay. When Pete Seeger says they're going to do all the verses. Now, whether that's a true story or not, I love the thought of that. That this wonderfully...
I love the thought of it, too. And the Seeger's version is Bruce Springsteen calls up Pete Seeger, and he goes, you're coming down to D.C. And Pete Seeger goes, I'm very old. And Bruce says, don't worry, I'm going to take care of everything. I'm going to get your lodging, your food, your transport. I'm going to take care of everything. All you have to do is bring your banjo and memorize the verses. So even if Pete Seeger did specify, Bruce was the one who got him down there.
Oh, that is so awesome.
Isn't that cool?
That is very cool. I do love that version, and I think there's something beautiful about Seeger and Springsteen playing together on such a wonderful occasion of our, of this, whatever you may think politically, this step forward for our country. And so I think that's a beautiful thing.
It was such a great moment.
Yes.
I remember watching it, and because I was like a Bruce Springsteen fan at the time. I didn't really know who Pete Seeger was, but I remember watching it, and I was like, this is cool.
Yeah. So is there just as a cool story for We Shall Overcome?
In terms of the two of them playing together?
Or just anywhere
not
else?
Not really.
Or another one?
Well, there is a quote from an unnamed organizer from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee who says, when you got through singing We Shall Overcome, you could walk over a bed of hot coals and you wouldn't notice.
Wow.
So We Shall Overcome definitely gave people a lot of fortitude in the movement. And Dr. King had a thing as well. I don't know how popular this was, but I think he used it at a couple of protests where he was like, no shouting, no singing, no nothing while you're protesting. And once they arrest you, then the singing can begin.
Mm.
So, yeah, songs were really like a huge, huge part of the civil rights movement. So We Shall Overcome has less of, a flashpoint story and more of a it really gave people strength and solace and kind of helped them up in some arguably incredibly difficult times.
Okay, very interesting. And I think I go back to there's a wonderful scene in one of my favorite movies, Casablanca, where they play the French. Yeah, when they play the French, anthem, and all of a sudden, the Germans are trying to shout it out, and he goes, play Le Meg, and all of a sudden the whole cafe is screaming and everything, and I have tears in my eyes every time I watch that, and
I think that's one of the best scenes in the movie.
Yes, and I kind of think of that with the We Shall Overcome, that whole emotional, especially as you tell the story, once we're arrested, then we're going to do this singing. That's just chilling to think about that.
Mm-hmm. And like filling the jails with song.
Yeah.
It's just, it's crazy. It takes a level of inner strength, I think, to just be like, well, I'm in jail, so I'm just going to sing, because I would be complaining.
Yeah. Here is why I think if I lean more toward This Land Is Your Land because of the double meaning. I think as a song, it can go both ways, and it can, this beautiful message of how this country is beautiful and our very varied, just political, just not necessarily political, but our landscape and our diversity, but also the talking about, sending that message of how we need to do better. I think that's why I would go a little bit leaning toward it, because of the duality of it, and maybe it's a little bit sneakier and a little bit easier to get the political message through.
I'm so glad you said sneaky. We'll come back to why later, but I want to just agree with you.
Please.
I also am leaning more towards This Land Is Your Land, but here's what I'll say. Not as a song in general. If we're just looking at the two songs, This Land Is Your Land by Guthrie and We Shall Overcome by Pete Seeger, and We Shall Overcome every day of the week. But we are not looking at those. We are looking at Bruce's performances of those songs.
Okay.
And I gotta say, his performance of This Land Is Your Land is better. It's more in his style. He makes some changes. I'm sorry, that's my cat in the background.
That's okay.
He makes some changes with We Shall Overcome that I am not as much of a fan of.
Yeah.
Like the kind of rolling guitar part he does in We Shall Overcome is not my favorite way that the song is written. I think it's better the simpler it is. And so I lean more towards This Land Is Your Land in terms of Bruce performance, and because of the one of him and Pete Seeger on the National Mall.
That's a really interesting thought. I had not thought of it that way, but I can't disagree with that. I think that is a great. Yeah. Now, go ahead.
Let's be honest. This Land Is Your Land is a song Bruce would have written. I don't know if Bruce, I love him, I don't know if he would have written a We Shall Overcome. I don't know if that's his style.
Yeah.
Because it's so big and so political, and like you said, Bruce likes to tell the stories of people.
Yes.
And I think he'd go more for I am a traveler through America than he would we as a collective shall overcome our adversity someday.
Yes. Okay.
So that's my...
All right. Now, you said something sneaky, and you wanted to go back to that. So talk about that.
It's my absolute favorite quote in the entire world, and it was the title of the paper I wrote on Pete Seeger. And I didn't copy it into my notes for this episode because I took copious notes for this episode. I had to find it in the paper, which shouldn't be too hard, but it basically, the quote is, I found it. Songs are sneaky things. Oh, God. Now I'm just ruining it.
No, you're fine.
Okay, songs won't save the planet, but then neither will books and speeches. Songs are sneaky things. They can slip across borders, proliferate in prisons, penetrate hard shells. If rulers really knew how important songs could be, they would probably have done something to Woody Guthrie and me and other people long ago. So that is a Pete Seeger quote, and I love it so much.
Yeah, no, that is a great quote.
Yeah, so I love that you said sneaky, because that's exactly what This Land Is Your Land is. It's sneaking in when you're a kid and you're performing it for the spring concert, and then you listen to it and you're like, I guess it is good that we got a lot of different stuff in America. And then you grow up and you're like, oh, different stuff means different ideas.
Yes. Yeah, I think that. So, are we ready to call it for This Land Is Your Land?
I think we're ready to call it, with the caveat that this is a better song that Bruce has performed. Yes,
and I think that's fair enough. And I'm comfortable with that. I think that's a pretty good decision. I'm happy with that one, Bella. Good job.
I stand by it.
Okay, very good. So, Bella, this was
a very
so
polite
much.
cage match, Jesse.
Well, I think most of them are going to be. I mean,
that's true.
I mean, when you're talking Incident in Jungle Land, are you going to talk trash about either one? I mean,
you can't.
Right, and
but
so
I will
think
say Team Jungle Land. I'm going to go on record now.
I think that's going to be a tough one to fight. So, Bella, if someone wants to reach you, how can they?
You can find me on Twitter at Bella Pori. My last name is Pori. You can go to callthemin.com to learn more about my political work. And then I have a personal blog that's westwingbestwing.com, although it gets updated way less now that I'm doing all the Call Them In stuff.
Yes. Sounds great. And I am at Jesse Jackson DFW. We are at Set Lusting Bruce on Twitter as well. We have a Facebook page, and if you get a chance, please go to iTunes or Stitcher and subscribe to the podcast and give us a rating or review. It is how people find us. If you have a suggestion about a Bruce Springsteen cage match, please reach out to me. There's an email, setlustingbruce@gmail.com. And we're hoping to do a series of these. I've reached out to a lot of friends of the podcast, previous guests, and JB is trying to work out his schedule to visit with me. And so I think this will be a lot of fun. Bella, thank you so much for rushing home from work and helping me out.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Bella, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you have a closing quote you want to share with us?
I do. It is a Woody Guthrie quote. It's one of my favorites. So I hate a song that makes you think you're not any good. I hate a song that makes you think you are just born to lose, bound to lose, no good to nobody, no good to nothing. Songs that run you down or poke fun at you on account of your bad luck or hard traveling. I'm out to fight those songs to my very last breath of air and my last drop of blood. I'm out to sing songs that will prove to you that this is your world, that if it has hit you pretty hard and knocked you for a few dozen loops, no matter what color, what size you are, how you're built, I am out to sing the songs that make you take pride in yourself and your work. And the songs that I sing are made up, for the most part, by all sorts of folks just about like you.
Wow, that is perfect. And it needs to be said. It needs to be said very much. So
it really does.
Yes. Thank you, Bella. Thank you, listeners. We'll talk to you soon.